Lisa Morgan walked into the office building every morning at exactly 7:30. She carried her simple black bag and wore clothes that never stood out. At 32 years old, she had worked at Hartwell and Associates for 4 years. The consulting firm sat in the middle of downtown Chicago, surrounded by tall buildings and busy streets. Every day was the same for Lisa. She would sit at her small desk in the corner of the office and open her computer. While other workers talked about their weekends or complained about their workload, Lisa stayed quiet. She focused on her numbers and reports. Her co-workers often forgot she was there. The office buzzed with activity around her. People walked back and forth holding coffee cups and chatting about clients. The phone rang constantly. Meetings happened in glass rooms where everyone could see important people talking and pointing at charts on the wall. Lisa watched it all, but rarely joined in. Her supervisor was Gary Thompson, a man in his early 40s who had worked at the company for 12 years. Gary was respected by everyone. He wore expensive suits and spoke confidently in meetings. Clients trusted him because he always delivered good results. Gary had helped many big companies solve their problems and make more money. At first, Gary barely noticed Lisa. She was just another junior analyst among many. But after 6 months, something changed. Lisa had been working on a report about a clothing company that was losing money. Other analysts had looked at the same problem for weeks without finding answers. Lisa spent her evenings reading through old files and studying market trends that others had missed. When she finished her report, it was different from anything Gary had seen before. Lisa had found the real reason why the clothing company was failing. She discovered that they were buying materials from the wrong suppliers and selling to the wrong customers. Her solution was simple but brilliant. The company could save $2 million by making just a few changes. Gary called Lisa into his office after reading her report. She sat in the chair across from his big wooden desk, feeling nervous. The office had pictures of Gary with important clients and awards on the walls. "This is excellent work," Gary said, holding up her report. "How did you find this information?" Lisa's voice was quiet when she answered. "I read through 5 years of their financial records. I also looked at their competitors and found patterns that others missed." Gary was impressed. Most analysts only looked at recent data. Lisa had gone much deeper. She had spent hours after work studying information that seemed boring to everyone else. But her hard work had paid off. From that day forward, Gary started giving Lisa more important projects. He invited her to sit in client meetings where she mostly listened and took notes. Lisa was surprised by these opportunities. She had always believed that good work would eventually be noticed, but she never expected it to happen so fast. The other analysts in the office began to notice the changes too. Lisa was getting assignments that usually went to more senior workers. She was traveling to client offices with Gary for presentations. Her name appeared on important reports that reached the company's biggest customers. Karen White had been working at the company for 6 years. She sat 3 desks away from Lisa and had applied for several promotions without success. Karen watched as Lisa received one good assignment after another. It didn't make sense to her. Lisa was quiet and didn't participate in office social events. She didn't have connections or a fancy degree from an expensive school. "There's something strange about this," Karen whispered to Tom Johnson during their lunch break. Tom had been at the company for 5 years and felt frustrated about his own lack of advancement. "What do you mean?" Tom asked, eating his sandwich in the break room. "Look at Lisa," Karen said, glancing toward Lisa's desk. "She's been here 4 years and suddenly she's working on million-dollar accounts. She doesn't even talk to clients on the phone. How is she getting these opportunities?" Tom shrugged. "Maybe Gary sees something in her work that we don't." But Karen wasn't convinced. She started paying closer attention to Lisa's interactions with Gary. She noticed that Gary always had time to answer Lisa's questions. He would stand by her desk and explain complicated concepts that he expected other analysts to figure out on their own. When Lisa needed research materials, Gary made sure she got access to expensive databases that were usually reserved for senior staff. Other people in the office began to notice these things too. During coffee breaks, some workers wondered aloud why Lisa was receiving so much attention from their supervisor. A few people suggested that Lisa must be very smart. but others weren't so sure. The situation became more obvious when Lisa received her first big promotion. After 4 years at the company, she was moved from junior analyst to senior analyst. This usually took 6 or 7 years for most workers. The promotion came with a significant pay raise and access to even more important clients. On the day the promotion was announced, Lisa felt proud but also confused by her co-workers' reactions. Instead of congratulations, she received cold stares and whispered conversations that stopped when she walked by. She had worked incredibly hard for this opportunity, often staying in the office until 9 or 10 at night while others went home at 5. Lisa had always been a dedicated worker. In college, she studied business and finance while working part-time to pay for her education. She graduated with good grades from a state university and was proud to get her first job at Hartwell and Associates. She lived in a small apartment and saved most of her money. She didn't go out to expensive restaurants or buy designer clothes. Her life was simple and focused on building her career. But now, sitting at her new desk in a better location within the office, Lisa sensed that something had changed. People looked at her differently. Conversation stopped when she entered the break room. She felt isolated in a way that she had never experienced before. Gary continued to give Lisa challenging assignments. He trusted her with important clients and included her in high-level strategy meetings. Lisa was grateful for these opportunities and worked even harder to prove that she deserved them. She produced excellent results on every project, helping clients save money and increase their profits. However, the whispers in the office grew louder. Some people started to question whether Lisa's success was really based on her abilities. They wondered if there might be another explanation for her rapid advancement. The seeds of suspicion were planted, and they would soon grow into something much more serious. Lisa remained focused on her work, unaware that her colleagues were beginning to view her success with doubt and resentment. She had no idea that her dedication and talent would soon be questioned in ways that would threaten everything she had worked so hard to achieve. The company retreat happened every year in late September. This year, Hartwell and Associates had chosen a beautiful lakeside resort, 2 hours outside of Chicago. All employees were required to attend the 3-day event. The retreat was supposed to build team spirit and give everyone a chance to relax together outside the office. Lisa packed her simple clothes in a small suitcase. She had never been comfortable at company social events, but she knew attendance was mandatory. The resort had large meeting rooms for presentations during the day, and a restaurant and bar for evening activities. On the first day, Lisa sat quietly, through team-building exercises and listened to speeches from the company partners. She took notes during the business sessions and tried to participate when asked direct questions. Most of her co-workers seemed to enjoy the relaxed atmosphere, but Lisa felt out of place. The second day was different. Gary had scheduled Lisa to give a presentation about her latest project. She had been working for months on a market analysis for a potential new client. The project involved studying how people bought electronics online and finding ways for companies to sell more products. Lisa had discovered something important during her research. She found that most companies were targeting the wrong age groups with their advertising. They were spending millions of dollars trying to sell to young people when middle-aged customers were actually buying more expensive items. Her analysis showed exactly how companies could change their marketing to increase sales by 30%. The presentation room was full of employees and several potential clients who had been invited to see the company's work. Lisa stood at the front of the room with her charts and graphs displayed on a large screen. Her hands shook slightly as she began to speak, but her voice grew stronger as she explained her findings. Most electronics companies focus their advertising on people between 18 and 30 years old, Lisa said, pointing to her data. But my research shows that customers between 40 and 55 years old spend twice as much money on electronics each year. The audience listened carefully as Lisa explained her research methods and conclusions. She had interviewed thousands of customers, studied buying patterns from 50 different companies, and analyzed 5 years of sales data. Her work was thorough and convincing. When Lisa finished her presentation, the room was quiet for a moment. Then one of the potential clients, a woman named Susan Davis, who owned a chain of electronics stores, began asking detailed questions. Susan was impressed by Lisa's research and wanted to know more about implementing the marketing changes. "This is exactly the kind of analysis we need," Susan said. "How quickly could your company help us redesign our advertising strategy?" Gary smiled and looked proud as he watched Lisa answer the client's questions confidently. Other employees in the room seemed surprised by Lisa's knowledge and presentation skills. Some had never heard her speak for more than a few minutes at a time. After the presentation, several potential clients approached Lisa to discuss her research further. Gary stood nearby, introducing Lisa as one of the company's most talented analysts. Lisa felt proud but also nervous about all the attention. That evening, the company hosted a dinner and cocktail party in the resort's main dining room. Employees sat at round tables eating and drinking while music played in the background. Lisa sat with people from her department, mostly listening to their conversations about sports and weekend plans. After dinner, many employees moved to the bar area. Lisa ordered a soft drink and found a quiet corner where she could watch the lake through the large windows. She was tired from the day's presentations and planned to go to her room early. That's when she heard Karen White's voice from a nearby table. Karen was sitting with Tom Johnson and two other analysts, drinking wine and speaking in a voice that was louder than usual. "Did you see how Gary was looking at Lisa during her presentation?" Karen said, her words slightly slurred. "He was so proud, like a father watching his daughter or something." "She did give a good presentation," said Amy Chen, another analyst who had joined their table. "Good presentation?" Karen laughed bitterly. "Come on, Amy. You've been here 3 years and you've never been asked to present to potential clients. I've been here 6 years and Gary barely knows my name. But Lisa gets to do a major presentation after 4 years." Tom nodded and took a drink of his beer. "It is pretty unusual. I mean, she's smart, but there are a lot of smart people at our company." "Exactly," Karen said, leaning forward and lowering her voice slightly. "So what makes her so special? Why does Gary give her all the best assignments? Why does he spend so much time at her desk explaining things to her?" Amy looked uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Maybe she just works really hard." "We all work hard," Karen replied, "but we don't all get invited to travel with Gary to client meetings. Have you noticed that? Lisa goes on all these business trips with him, just the two of them." Lisa felt her stomach drop as she realized what Karen was suggesting. She moved closer to the window, hoping they wouldn't notice her listening. "You think something is going on between them?" Tom asked quietly. Karen shrugged and finished her wine. "I'm just saying it's suspicious. Gary is married with kids, but he spends an awful lot of time mentoring one particular employee. And that employee happens to be an attractive woman who gets promoted faster than anyone else in the company." "That's a serious accusation," Amy said, looking around to make sure no one else was listening. "I'm not accusing anyone of anything," Karen said defensively. "I'm just pointing out facts. Lisa gets special treatment. She gets the best projects, the best opportunities, and now she's presenting to major clients. Either she's the smartest person who ever worked at our company, or there's another reason Gary is helping her career so much." Tom was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. "I heard they went to Detroit together last month for the automotive client meeting. Just the two of them. Gary never used to take junior staff on those kinds of trips." "See what I mean?" Karen said triumphantly. "It all adds up. And now she's getting all this recognition for work that she probably couldn't have done without his help." Lisa felt sick to her stomach. She had earned every opportunity through hard work and dedication. Her trips with Gary were strictly professional. They discussed client needs, reviewed presentations, and focused entirely on business. Gary had never been inappropriate with her in any way. But listening to her coworkers, Lisa realized how her success might look to others. She had received unusual opportunities for someone at her level. Gary did spend time helping her understand complex concepts. They had traveled together to several client meetings. Lisa quietly left the bar area and went to her room. She lay awake most of the night, thinking about Karen's words and wondering how many other people shared those suspicions. She had always focused on her work and ignored office politics, but now she realized that her colleagues had been watching and judging her success. The next morning, Lisa noticed that some people looked at her differently. Conversations seemed to stop when she walked by. She felt paranoid and self-conscious in a way she had never experienced before. During the final day of the retreat, Lisa tried to act normally, but she could sense whispered conversations and sideways glances. The seed of suspicion that Karen had planted was beginning to grow, and Lisa had no idea how much worse things were about to become. Monday morning felt different when Lisa walked into the office. The weekend had not been peaceful for her. She had spent Saturday and Sunday thinking about the conversations she overheard at the company retreat. Every time she remembered Karen's words, her stomach felt tight with worry. The office seemed quieter than usual. People were at their desks working, but Lisa noticed that fewer coworkers said good morning to her. When she walked past the coffee machine, 2 analysts stopped talking and looked away. Lisa tried to tell herself she was imagining things, but the feeling of being watched followed her throughout the day. By Tuesday, the situation had gotten worse. Lisa could hear whispered conversations that stopped suddenly when she appeared. During lunch break, she sat alone at a table in the company cafeteria. Usually, a few coworkers would join her, but today everyone seemed to have other plans. Gary appeared to be acting normally. He gave Lisa new assignments and asked her opinion about client strategies. But Lisa noticed that some people stared when Gary stopped by her desk to discuss projects. She began to feel self-conscious about every interaction with her supervisor. Wednesday brought the phone call that Lisa had been dreading without even knowing it. Patricia Davis from Human Resources called Lisa's desk at 2 in the afternoon. "Lisa, I need you to come to conference room B right away," Patricia said in a professional voice that revealed nothing. "Is everything okay?" Lisa asked, though she suspected it wasn't. "We just need to discuss some workplace matters. Please come now." Lisa's hands were shaking as she walked down the hallway to the conference room. Patricia Davis was a woman in her 50s who had worked in human resources for 15 years. She was known for being fair but strict about company policies. Lisa had only spoken to her a few times during company meetings. Conference room B was a small windowless room with a round table and 4 chairs. Patricia sat across from Lisa with a folder of papers in front of her. The room felt cold and official. "Lisa, I want you to know that we take all workplace concerns seriously at this company," Patricia began. "Someone has made a complaint about your professional relationship with Gary Thompson." Lisa felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "What kind of complaint?" Patricia opened her folder and looked at the papers inside. "The complaint suggests that you and Gary have developed an inappropriate personal relationship that has affected your work assignments and career advancement." "That's not true," Lisa said immediately. Her voice sounded small in the quiet room. "The person who made the complaint believes that you have received special treatment because of this alleged relationship," Patricia continued. "They claim that your rapid promotion and high-profile assignments are the result of favoritism rather than merit." Lisa's mind raced as she tried to process what she was hearing. Someone had actually filed an official complaint against her. The whispered conversations at the retreat had turned into something much more serious. "Who made this complaint?" Lisa asked. "The complaint was submitted anonymously," Patricia replied. "But that doesn't make it less serious. We have an obligation to investigate any allegations of inappropriate workplace relationships, especially when they involve supervisors and their direct reports." Lisa felt tears forming in her eyes, but she tried to stay calm. "Gary has never been inappropriate with me. Our relationship is completely professional. I've earned every opportunity through my work." Patricia made notes on a piece of paper as Lisa spoke. "I understand this is difficult for you, but you need to know that we will be conducting a thorough investigation. This will include reviewing your email communications with Gary, examining travel records, and interviewing other employees." The thought of her coworkers being interviewed about her made Lisa feel sick. She imagined Karen White sitting in this same room, sharing her suspicions with Patricia. How many other people would be asked about Lisa's relationship with Gary? "What happens during this investigation?" Lisa asked. "You and Gary will both be interviewed separately. We'll look at all documentation related to your work assignments and travel. We'll also speak to other employees to understand the general workplace environment," Patricia explained. "Can I continue working normally?" Patricia nodded. "For now, yes. But I want you to understand that if we find evidence of policy violations, there could be serious consequences. Inappropriate relationships between supervisors and subordinates violate company policy and can result in termination." Lisa left the meeting feeling devastated. She walked back to her desk in a daze, trying to act as if nothing had happened. But she was sure that other employees could see the distress on her face. The next day, Gary was called into his own meeting with Patricia. Lisa watched nervously as he walked down the hallway to the HR office. When he returned an hour later, his face was serious and worried. He didn't stop by Lisa's desk for the rest of the day. By Friday, news of the investigation had spread throughout the office. People weren't even trying to hide their discussions about Lisa and Gary anymore. Lisa heard her name mentioned in conversations across the room. Some coworkers looked at her with curiosity, others with judgment. Karen White seemed particularly satisfied with the turn of events. She no longer bothered to lower her voice when talking about Lisa. During lunch, Lisa overheard Karen telling a group of coworkers that she wasn't surprised by the investigation. "I've been saying for months that something didn't add up," Karen said. "Normal employees don't get that kind of special treatment unless there's a reason." Tom Johnson nodded in agreement. "It explains why she got promoted so fast. I mean, she's smart, but not that much smarter than the rest of us." Lisa felt completely alone. The coworkers who had been friendly to her before were now distant and suspicious. Even people who barely knew her seemed to have opinions about her alleged misconduct. The following Monday, Patricia called Lisa back to conference room B. This time, the meeting lasted 2 hours. Patricia asked detailed questions about every business trip Lisa had taken with Gary, every private conversation they had shared, and every assignment she had received. "Did Gary ever make comments about your appearance?" Patricia asked. "No, never," Lisa replied firmly. "Did he ever suggest meeting outside of work for social purposes?" "No. We've never socialized outside of work." "Has he ever given you gifts or special favors unrelated to work performance?" "No. Everything has been professional." Patricia asked the same types of questions in different ways, as if she was trying to catch Lisa in a contradiction. Lisa answered honestly every time, but she could see that Patricia was taking extensive notes about everything she said. After the meeting, Lisa felt emotionally drained. She realized that her entire career at the company was now under scrutiny. Every achievement, every promotion, every successful project was being questioned. Her colleagues doubted her abilities, and her supervisors were investigating her integrity. That afternoon, Lisa received the news that would make everything even worse. Gary was being placed on administrative leave while the investigation continued. This meant that Lisa would have to face the hostile work environment completely alone, without the support of the supervisor who had believed in her abilities. Gary cleaned out his desk and prepared to leave the office. He stopped by Lisa's desk one final time. "Keep doing good work," he said quietly. "The truth will come out eventually." But as Lisa watched Gary walk out of the office, she wondered if the truth would be enough to save her career and her reputation. With Gary gone from the office, Lisa felt completely alone. The empty chair at his desk reminded everyone that something serious was happening. Some coworkers whispered that Gary might never come back. Others said the investigation would probably end his career at the company. Lisa knew that many people expected her to quit. She could see it in their faces when they looked at her. They thought she would be too embarrassed to continue working while under investigation. Some probably hoped she would leave so the office could return to normal. But Lisa made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She was not going to quit. She was not going to run away from the lies that people were telling about her. Instead, she was going to prove that her success had nothing to do with any inappropriate relationship. She would show everyone that her work was excellent because she was an excellent analyst. The first week without Gary was the hardest. Lisa arrived at the office earlier than usual and stayed later than everyone else. She wanted to avoid the awkward, conversations in the break room and the stairs in the hallway, but mostly, she wanted to focus completely on her work. Helen Murphy, one of the senior partners, took over Gary's responsibilities temporarily. Helen was a woman in her 50s who had built her reputation by being tough and demanding. She didn't believe in giving anyone special treatment, and she had little patience for office drama. "I don't care about the investigation or the rumors," Helen told Lisa during their first meeting. "I only care about results. If you can do good work, we'll get along fine. If you can't, you won't last long in this company." Lisa appreciated Helen's direct approach. It was exactly what she needed to hear. Helen assigned Lisa to several projects that other analysts were already working on. Lisa threw herself into the work with incredible energy and focus. The first project involved helping a restaurant chain figure out why their sales were dropping. 3 other analysts had been studying the problem for 2 months without finding a clear answer. They had looked at menu prices, location traffic, and customer surveys, but nothing seemed to explain the decline in business. Lisa started from the beginning. She spent her evenings reading through customer complaints, studying competitor strategies, and analyzing sales data from different time periods. She worked weekends in the empty office, surrounded by papers and computer screens. After 2 weeks of intensive research, Lisa discovered something that the other analysts had missed. The restaurant chain's sales were dropping because their new healthy menu items were confusing customers. People came expecting traditional comfort food but found menu options that seemed too fancy and expensive. Lisa's solution was simple but effective. She recommended that the company create 2 separate menu sections, one for traditional favorites and one for new healthy options. She also suggested lowering prices on the healthy items and explaining them in simpler language. When Lisa presented her findings to Helen, the senior partner was impressed. "This makes perfect sense," Helen said, reviewing Lisa's research. "Why didn't the other analysts figure this out?" "They focused on external factors like competition and location," Lisa explained. "But the real problem was internal. The company was sending mixed messages to their customers." Helen nodded approvingly. "Good work. I'm scheduling you to present this to the client next week." The presentation to the restaurant chain went extremely well. The company's executives immediately understood Lisa's analysis and agreed to implement her recommendations. Within a month, the restaurant chain reported a 15% increase in sales. Word of Lisa's success began to spread through the office. Some co-workers who had been avoiding her started to pay attention to her work again. They realized that Lisa was producing excellent results even without Gary's guidance and support. But the biggest opportunity came when Helen approached Lisa about the Johnson Industries account. Johnson Industries was one of the company's most difficult clients. They manufactured electronic components for other companies, but they had been losing money for 3 years straight. 5 different analysts have worked on this account, Helen told Lisa. None of them could figure out why Johnson Industries keeps losing money. The client is getting frustrated and might take their business elsewhere. "What kind of problems are they having?" Lisa asked. "Everything," Helen replied. "High costs, low efficiency, unhappy customers. Their CEO is coming in next Friday for one final presentation. If we can't give him a solution that works, we'll lose a client that pays us over $2 million per year." Lisa knew this was her chance to prove herself beyond any doubt. If she could solve a problem that 5 other analysts couldn't figure out, no one would be able to question her abilities ever again. She requested access to all of Johnson Industries' financial records, operational reports, and customer feedback from the past 5 years. Then she began the most intensive research project of her career. Lisa worked 18 hours every day for 3 weeks. She studied every aspect of Johnson Industries' business operations. She analyzed their supply chain, their manufacturing processes, their pricing strategies, and their relationships with customers. She compared their performance to their competitors and looked for patterns that others had missed. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday evening when Lisa was reviewing shipping records. She noticed that Johnson Industries was spending enormous amounts of money on expedited shipping because they couldn't predict when orders would be ready. This happened because their production schedule was constantly disrupted by equipment breakdowns and material shortages. But the equipment breakdowns and material shortages were happening because the company was trying to save money by buying cheaper parts and delaying maintenance. This false economy was actually costing them much more money in the long run. Lisa traced this problem through every department of the company. She found 17 different areas where Johnson Industries was making decisions that seemed cost-effective in the short term, but were actually very expensive over time. Her solution was comprehensive but practical. Lisa created a detailed plan that would help Johnson Industries spend more money up front on quality materials and regular maintenance, which would save them millions of dollars annually in reduced breakdowns, faster production, and cheaper shipping. The ICU presentation was scheduled for Friday afternoon. Lisa had prepared charts, graphs, and detailed financial projections showing exactly how much money her recommendations would save. She had practiced her presentation dozens of times and felt confident about her analysis. But she also knew that this presentation would determine her future at the company. If she failed, people would say that she had only been successful when Gary was helping her. If she succeeded, she would prove once and for all that her abilities were real. Thursday night, Lisa barely slept. She reviewed her presentation materials one final time and tried to prepare for any questions the client might ask. She knew that everyone in the office would be watching to see whether she could succeed on her own. Friday morning, Lisa dressed carefully in her best professional outfit. She arrived at the office early and set up the presentation room with her materials. Helen Murphy stopped by to wish her luck. "This is your moment," Helen said simply. "Show them what you can do." Lisa nodded, feeling nervous but determined. She had worked harder on this project than anything else in her career. Now it was time to find out if her best effort would be good enough to silence her critics forever. The conference room was full when Lisa walked in for her presentation. Robert Hayes, the CEO of Johnson Industries, sat at the head of the table with 3 other executives from his company. Helen Murphy was there representing Hartwell and Associates, along with 2 other senior partners. Lisa noticed that several coworkers had found reasons to walk past the glass-walled conference room, trying to watch what was happening inside. Lisa set up her laptop and checked her presentation materials one final time. Her hands were steady now, even though she knew this moment would determine everything. Robert Hayes looked tired and frustrated. His company had been losing money for 3 years, and he had heard many promises from consultants that had led nowhere. "Ms. Morgan," Robert said as Lisa prepared to begin, "I hope you understand that this is my company's last attempt to work with your firm. We've spent a lot of time and money on analysis that hasn't helped us. I need real solutions, not more theories." "I understand completely, Mr. Hayes," Lisa replied. "I believe I've found the root cause of your problems and a practical way to fix them." Lisa began her presentation by showing Johnson Industries' financial performance over the past 5 years. The numbers painted a clear picture of a company in serious trouble. Costs were rising while profits were falling, and the situation was getting worse each year. "Most consultants have focused on individual problems," Lisa explained. "They've looked at your manufacturing costs or your supply chain or your customer satisfaction separately. But I discovered that all of these problems are connected." She clicked to her next slide, which showed a flowchart of how Johnson Industries made decisions about spending money. Lisa had spent weeks creating this chart, tracing how small cost-cutting decisions in one department created much larger problems in other departments. "Your company tries to save money by buying cheaper materials," Lisa continued. "But these cheaper materials break down more often, which stops production and forces you to pay for expensive emergency repairs." The executives leaned forward, listening carefully. Lisa could see that they recognized the pattern she was describing. When production stops unexpectedly, you can't deliver orders on time, so you pay for expedited shipping to meet your deadlines. This expedited shipping costs more than the money you saved by buying cheaper materials. Robert Hayes nodded slowly. "We've noticed the shipping costs, but we didn't connect them to the materials." "It gets worse," Lisa said, moving to her next slide. "When you can't deliver orders on time, your customers lose confidence in your company. Some of them start buying from your competitors, which means you lose sales revenue." Lisa spent the next 30 minutes walking through each of the 17 problem areas she had identified. She showed exactly how Johnson Industries was spending money in ways that seemed smart, but actually cost them much more in the long run. The room was completely quiet as Lisa presented her analysis. Even the executives who had seemed skeptical at the beginning were taking notes and asking detailed questions. "So what's your solution?" asked Margaret Chen, Johnson Industries' chief financial officer. Lisa clicked to a new section of her presentation. "I recommend that Johnson Industries spend more money up front on quality materials, regular maintenance, and better planning systems. This will cost about $400,000 initially." Robert Hayes frowned. "We're trying to save money, not spend more." "But look at what you'll save," Lisa said, showing her financial projections. "By spending $400,000 on these improvements, you'll save almost $2 million per year in reduced breakdowns, faster production, cheaper shipping, and fewer lost customers." She had prepared detailed charts showing exactly how much money each change would save. The math was clear and convincing. Johnson Industries would recover their initial investment within 3 months and then save nearly $2 million every year afterward. Margaret Chen studied the numbers carefully. "These projections look very detailed. How confident are you in these estimates?" "I base them on 5 years of your actual financial data," Lisa replied. "I also compared your company to similar businesses that have made these changes. The results have been consistent across the industry." Robert Hayes asked several challenging questions about Lisa's recommendations. He wanted to know exactly how to implement the changes and what risks might be involved. Lisa answered every question with specific details and supporting data. After an hour of discussion, Robert Hayes looked around the table at his executives. "This is the first analysis that actually explains why we're losing money. And more importantly, it gives us a clear plan to fix the problems," Margaret Chen agreed. "I've never seen such a thorough breakdown of our operational issues. This makes perfect sense." Robert Hayes turned to Helen Murphy. "We want to move forward with Ms. Morgan's recommendations immediately, and we want to extend our contract with your firm for 3 more years." Helen smiled and shook hands with Robert Hayes. The contract extension was worth over $15 million, making it the largest deal in the company's history. After the Johnson Industries executives left, word of Lisa's success spread through the office within minutes. Coworkers who had been avoiding her for weeks suddenly wanted to congratulate her. The presentation had been so impressive that even people who had believed the rumors about her began to question their assumptions. 2 weeks later, Patricia Davis called Lisa back to conference room B. But this time, the meeting was very different from their previous conversations. "Lisa, I want to apologize to you personally," Patricia said. "Our investigation has found no evidence of any inappropriate relationship between you and Gary Thompson. The allegations were completely unfounded." Lisa felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "What exactly did you find?" "We reviewed hundreds of emails between you and Gary. Every message was completely professional and work-related. We examined all travel records and found that your business trips were legitimate and properly documented. We also interviewed Gary's other mentees and discovered that he has a history of investing time in high-potential employees, regardless of gender." Patricia continued. "Most importantly, we analyzed your work performance and found that your success is clearly based on exceptional ability and dedication. Your results speak for themselves." The investigation was officially closed and Gary returned to work the following Monday. When he walked back into the office, he went directly to Lisa's desk. "I heard about the Johnson Industries presentation," he said with a smile. "Congratulations, that was incredible work." "Thank you for believing in me," Lisa replied. "I never doubted you," Gary said. "Your talent was obvious from the beginning." A month later, Helen Murphy called Lisa into her office with surprising news. "The partners have voted to promote you to principal analyst," Helen announced. "You'll be the youngest person in company history to reach that level." Lisa felt proud, but not entirely surprised. She had worked incredibly hard and produced exceptional results even under the most difficult circumstances. Karen White submitted her resignation letter the following week. She had realized that her unfounded accusations had damaged her own reputation more than Lisa's. Tom Johnson was quietly transferred to a different department after his performance reviews showed that he had been producing mediocre work for years. Lisa never sought revenge against the co-workers who had spread rumors about her. Instead, she used her new position to create a better work environment for everyone. She mentored junior analysts and made sure that success was measured only by results and dedication. Years later, Lisa would remember this difficult time as the period that made her stronger and more confident. She had learned that the best response to unfair treatment was simply to continue doing excellent work. Eventually, the truth had become impossible to ignore, and her abilities had spoken louder than any rumors or accusations.